We are going to start the show as we have the last couple of shows with doing the NFL free agency grades for every NFL team in the NFL. Today we're going to be doing the AFC East, and we're going to start in Buffalo with the Buffalo Bills, who get an A-. I'm going to start giving the grades at the very beginning instead of just rambling and then giving a grade and then moving on. I think that's probably the better way to do it. So the Buffalo Bills get an A- for their offseason, and here is why. The Bills' offseason was about preserving the team that got to the AFC Championship game, right? That's the logic that you would take going into the offseason, and the Bills were really, really successful in retaining the players that they needed to this offseason. They re-signed Matt Milano, Darren Williams, and John Feliciano. Those were their three biggest free agents, and I was under the impression that they weren't going to be able to get all of them. I actually think I said during the Front Office Frenzy segment that they would either have to lose Williams or Feliciano, especially if they wanted to keep Matt Milano, which they should. Matt Milano is the key, the heart and soul of that Bills defense. I didn't think they were going to be able to keep all three, but they ended up keeping all three. So a fantastic win by Brandon Beane, who is the general manager for the Bills. Great use of the money. He's done a very good job recently of spending where he needs to and cutting back where he needs to as well. He's done a fantastic job with the Bills. Really excited what they're doing up in Buffalo and the ability to re-sign those players that they needed to. Some of them a little expensive. Specifically, Milano's contract is a little bit expensive. But again, I think he's worth every penny, especially what he means to that defense. The Bills also signed Emmanuel Sanders to replace the departing John Brown, which is a good replacement at a good price, 1 year, $6 million deal. John Brown was a little bit too expensive. He was a little bit outdated, especially with Diggs coming in and running the show afterwards. So good move there by Buffalo. Good, nice replacement. They also lost Andre Roberts, so that Emmanuel Sanders signing is even more important for the Bills. They are still a little light in the loafers when it comes to wide receiver at the moment. There's Diggs, Sanders, Cole Beasley. They're going to need that number 4 wide receiver, but that's easily findable rather in the NFL draft. They are going to have plenty of opportunities to get a quality wide receiver at some point. The Bills also signed Mitch Trubisky, which he does have the potential to be one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. It was big news when it happened. I said this at the time that it did happen. He's probably in the running for one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, and schematically, it works well with the Bills' offense. He's got a similar play style to Josh Allen. Just Josh Allen is just that much better than Mitchell Trubisky is, but it's a good scheme fit. It'll do well for Mitchell Trubisky to get a mental reset. He could be very useful for Buffalo. And hopefully, the relationship is beneficial for both parties, where Buffalo can help teach Trubisky, and Trubisky can help be that backup that they really needed in Buffalo for Josh Allen, just in case he gets hurt. He's been pretty sturdy thus far. And, the biggest loss for the Bills was probably Quentin Jefferson. That sucks. But if you're Buffalo, you feel good about that defense as long as Matt Milano there, which he is. Again, the Bills get an A- for their free agency acquisitions. They did a fantastic job of fulfilling the positions of need that they needed, re-signing the guys that they needed. And now it's going to be up to the draft to see whether they can plug more of those gaps, because they really were a better start and a couple of weapons and better drives away from beating the Chiefs in that AFC Championship game. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins get a B- for this free agency period. I was really expecting the Dolphins to be aggressive in free agency. This would have been the time to go after some big names if there ever was a big time to go after some big names. I think, based on their most recent moves, they've always believed in Tua, but the speculation was all that, okay, they're going to spend all that free agency money on Deshaun Watson, and I was never really convinced that was going to happen, but even still, you had about $30 million in cap space if you're Miami. And this is the time to go after free agents, because if any Miami fans can really attest that the culture has always been the problem in Miami. And it's been very difficult at times to get free agencies into Miami. And that kind of goes against the norm when you think about what people want in Miami. It's warm. It's Miami. The culture just has not been very healthy, and it's been hard to get free agents to go here without an exorbitant asking price, which the name that immediately comes to mind is Ndamukong Suh when he signed for $118 million, which was a massive overpay, well, looking back on it, but still. You've got $30 million in cap space, multiple first-round picks, and the culture change under Brian Flores has been widely praised across the league. So a 10-6 team going into the offseason, you could attract some big names to come to Miami, and it just didn't happen. It just did not happen. And instead, Miami released Kyle Van Noy, a move that still baffles me. They got his replacement in a trade with Houston, which been Derek McKinney, which is a fine player at a cheaper price, but Van Noy was a big part of the culture of that defense. And apart from those types of moves, the Dolphins' free agency ended up being about adding quality depth pieces, including Jacoby Brissett to replace Ryan Fitzpatrick, adding Justin Coleman, cornerback from Detroit, Adam Butler, defensive tackle coming in from New England. They added a lot of depth pieces, but they didn't go and spend on that big name that they could have gotten and they could have attracted to Miami, considering how good the team has been, or how good the team was last year, and how that quick turnaround looks like they're positioning themselves to be a playoff contender for years to come. Their best signing was probably Will Fuller, because the Dolphins desperately needed wide receiver help for Tua, and when healthy, Fuller is one of the best deep threats in the league. So it's a 1 year, $10 million signing. It's going to be very beneficial for Miami if it ends up working out and Fuller stays healthy. But to say that that's their best signing is a little bit disappointing. It seems like the Dolphins are really relying upon the draft to continue to add some key pieces, which is fine, as long as you draft well, which they have recently. But still, I think the Dolphins could have gotten more this offseason, but reluctant not to. That's why they're getting a B-. They did get some good signings, some good depth additions, but they could have gone big. They could have really gone in on one of the few times that Miami has been a very attractive destination in the NFL, and they've seemingly kind of blew it this offseason. Now, down to the New York Jets. The New York Jets get an A, and you would never have thought that I would say that. The New York Jets get an A for their free agency this offseason. Now, don't look now, but the Jets are building a really good team in New York. There were some really good signings by the Jets this offseason, highlighted by Carl Lawson from the Bengals. He's an easy top 20 pass rusher when he's healthy, and he will give the Jets some pass rush that's been missing for a long time. Anderson was a bust in New York. He obviously was let go and picked up by New England. The Jets are finally going to have some pass rush that's coming from someplace other than their defensive tackle and Quinton Williams, which is a very weird place to be getting pass rush from. The Jets also signed Corey Davis, former number 5 overall pick, and not as good as his draft slot would indicate, but still a good number 2/borderline number 1 wide receiver. Jets also signed Keelan Cole, a good number 2, number 3 receiver at a cheap price from Jacksonville. Jets were also able to keep Marcus May, who was the best safety on the market. It's about time the Jets were able to hold on to a safety. Cough, cough, Jamal Adams. But I digress. The Jets also picked up LaMarcus Joyner on a 1-year flyer. He's a good ticket for the Jets to take a chance on. He's been really good in the past, but struggled last year in Las Vegas. The Jets got some really good signings, and now all they need to do is figure out the quarterback, which very well could be Zach Wilson. So if it's Zach Wilson, that's an exciting young offense in New York. The Jets get an A for their free agency this offseason. And last but not least, we've got the New England Patriots, who get a B for this free agency offseason. The Patriots were probably the biggest story of this season's free agency. They spent more guaranteed money than any team has done in one offseason in NFL history, and that's more guaranteed money, by the way. But kind of like the Texans from the last show, quantity doesn't always mean quality, and while there are absolutely much better players in the New England draft class, in the New England free agency class than the Texans free agency class, some of that money's absolutely going to backfire. First and foremost, the headliners, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, are two signings that point to the return of Belichick's 2 tight end system, which they haven't been able to run effectively since Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. Realistically, you probably could have gotten away with just signing one of those two guys, but Bill doubled down. I don't necessarily think it was the best move to double down. I would have just taken Smith, but to each their own. This is the most expensive tight end duo in the entire league, and it's not close. I think Bill probably could have gotten away with just signing Jonnu Smith and leaving Hunter Henry to somebody else, but Bill is very stuck in his ways, I guess, or maybe that's not the right way to put it, but he's very stubborn. He wants that 2 tight end system with 2 very deadly tight ends, and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith could very well be the next iteration of Gronkowski and Hernandez. Maybe not as good, but the idea is still the same. Then Matthew Judon is signing for a huge sum of money. The Matthew Judon signing is a signing like Bud Dupree heading from Pittsburgh to Tennessee that I'm kind of unsure about. I think Judon is a bit overrated, but that money might be well spent since Van Noy has signed with the Patriots at a cheaper price. So the linebacker core is relatively set for New England, and especially with Deatrick Wise Jr. getting re-signed, the pass rush for New England is going to be above average to really, really good. Obviously, the signing of Nelson Aguilar is pretty big for New England as well. No matter what quarterback is there, Aguilar is an experienced receiver, great route runner. He has the most deep touchdown. I don't know necessarily how to communicate that. He has the most touchdowns of 20 plus yards or more besides Tyreek Hill. He's the second most efficient deep pass touchdown catcher. That was a horrible explanation, but hopefully he gets the idea across. So really important signing there. Jalen Mills can come in and be a starter at the safety slot, especially after Patrick Chung retired. And lastly, the Patriots reshuffled their offensive line, brought back Trent Brown from Las Vegas. The Patriots spent a lot of money, and some of it will definitely backfire. I don't think that all the money tied up on the tight ends was necessarily a good idea, but Judon, also that signing is overrated. I think the Patriots are no longer a team that can really benefit on Belichick's genius to plug in the serious cracks in the team. So despite having a lot of quantity and a good portion of quality signings, some of them are a little bit risky, spending a little bit too much money in some places. And that's why the Patriots just get a B for this free agency off period. So now we've completely wiped out the AFC. We're going to start covering the NFC next. During the next show, whenever that is. I don't know where we'll start. Maybe we start with the NFC East. I know a lot of you watching the show are NFC East fans or a fan of one of the teams in the NFC East. So we will see where we go from there. But that was the AFC East free agency grades for the 2021 offseason. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening to this segment from the Hard-Headed Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this segment, make sure that you drop a like on the video and a comment. It helps me out a bunch. And if you're interested in watching more segments like this from the show after the show has been completed, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Once again, thank you so much for watching the video. My name is Nick Ryan, and I will see you all again very soon.